Humanity's dark matter warships, Shockwaves rip through the Galactic Council. The Great Hall of Conclave Prime was never quiet. It was a place built for noise, for argument, for politics, for the loud clash of 100 different species, all trying to pull the galaxy in their own direction. The hall stretched nearly a full kilometer from one end to the other, and its curved walls were lined with the banners and seals of every member species in the Galactic Council. Lights of every color buzzed and shifted overhead. Translators clicked and hummed as dozens of alien voices talked over each other. It was, by every measure, the most powerful room in the known galaxy. And today, it was being used to decide the fate of humanity. Ambassador Vetharak of the Dominari stood at the central podium. He was tall, even for his species, nearly 3 meters of dark-scaled muscle, with a long jaw and eyes the color of old amber. His voice was deep and smooth, the kind of voice that made other species feel calm, even when his words were anything but. The Soul Exclusion Zone has been silent for 63 standard years, he said, his translated words rolling through the hall like slow thunder. Humanity has made no contact. They have sent no ships beyond their borders. They have answered no diplomatic signals. We have been patient. We have been generous. But patience has limits, and the Council's generosity cannot go on forever. He paused, letting the silence do its work. The Sol system and its surrounding territories hold resources that the Council needs. 17 mineral-rich moons, 3 habitable secondary planets, a star with energy output that could power a dozen colony grids. These resources are being wasted, locked behind an embargo that was meant to protect the galaxy from human aggression, not to gift them a private empire. Murmurs moved through the chamber like a wave. Vetharak pressed forward. I am formally proposing Resolution 7 Gamma, the resolution of absorption. Human space will be integrated into Council territory. The human population will be offered protected status under Dominari administrative oversight. They will be cared for. They will be fed. They will simply no longer be independent. The murmurs turned into noise. Some species cheered. Some grumbled. A cluster of Yetharani delegates, small bird-like creatures with quick eyes, leaned together and whispered rapidly among themselves. The Borvac representatives, massive gray-skinned beings who valued order above all else, gave slow, approving nods. It moved quickly, the way votes always moved when powerful species had already made up their minds behind closed doors. One by one, the tallies came in. 34 in favor, 9 opposed, 2 abstentions. The resolution passed. Only one species had abstained rather than voted, the Luminari. They were small beings, insectoid, with large pale eyes and delicate limbs. They rarely spoke in full council sessions, preferring quiet diplomacy in private chambers. But today, their elder, a creature so old her shell had turned from gold to white, rose slowly from her seat. The room gave her a moment of surprised quiet. We abstain, she said, her voice soft and clicking through the translator, because we are not comfortable with this decision. Humanity has been silent for a long time. But we should ask ourselves, why are they silent? Not because they are gone, not because they are weak. She turned her pale eyes slowly across the chamber. We have not heard from them. That is not silence. That is preparation. No one responded. The moment passed. The vote stood. Vetharak barely glanced at her. He was already moving on to the logistics. Which fleet would lead the first annexation convoy? What timeline the Dominari preferred? How the human population transfer would be managed? The Luminari elder sat back down. She folded her thin hands together and said nothing more. But her eyes stayed open, and they were watching the stars through the great transparent wall of the chamber, as though she expected to see something there. 3 days later, The 14th Patrol Fleet of the Galactic Council was dispatched to the edge of the Sol Exclusion Zone. It was not a war fleet. It was an escort fleet, 40 ships strong, built for presence rather than combat. Their orders were simple: enter human space, establish a communication post, and signal the annexation convoy that the path was clear. Fleet Commander Oren Sesek of the Yethrani ran a clean operation. His ships moved in tight formation, their sensors active, their logs running. He had done this kind of mission before, moving into a quiet space and planting a flag. There was nothing to worry about. Humanity was silent. Humanity was finished. Everyone agreed on that. The fleet crossed the boundary marker at 0600 hours, standard galactic time. Their last recorded sensor ping was at 0601 hours. After that, nothing. No distress signal, no explosion, no debris field, no energy readings, no bodies, no wreckage, nothing that a battle leaves behind, and nothing that an accident leaves behind either. 40 ships and their crews simply ceased to appear on any sensor in the galaxy. The Council's reaction was not panic, not at first. Ships went missing sometimes. Navigation errors happened. The initial response was measured. Another scout was sent to investigate. It also vanished. Then a third, smaller ship, just a two-person observation vessel, was sent to the edge of the zone with orders only to scan, not to cross. It crossed anyway, or rather, something pulled it across. The crew of that small vessel, a pair of Borvac scouts, named Gorath and Hessen, were recovered 6 days later by a passing trade ship. They were found floating in an escape pod 40 light-years from where they had started, in perfectly fine health, with no memory of what had happened after they hit the boundary. Their ship's computer logs showed a gap of exactly 9 hours. 9 hours of blank recording, as though the ship's entire sensor suite had simply turned off. Gorath told the recovery team that the last thing he remembered was a feeling, not a sight, not a sound, just a feeling, like the universe had taken a breath and held it. Hessen said nothing at all. He stared at his hands for a long time when they asked him. Then he said, very quietly, "There was something out there, in the dark. It was very big, and it was looking at us." The Council emergency session was called within 12 hours. The Grand Hall of Conclave Prime, which had been so loud 3 days ago when the fate of humanity was decided with a comfortable vote and self-satisfied murmurs, was now a very different place. It was almost completely silent. Vethorak stood at the central podium again, but he did not look smooth or calm this time. His amber eyes were moving too quickly, scanning the room, scanning the data feeds on the screens around him. His jaw was tight. "We need answers," he said. And somewhere in the dark, beyond the edge of known Council space, in the vast quiet of the Sol Exclusion Zone, something that had no heat signature, no radiation output, and no gravitational profile, slowly turned in the void. It had been watching for a long time. It was very patient. Humanity's dark matter warships, Shockwaves, ripped through the Galactic Council. Sarah Voss had not slept in 4 days. This was not unusual for her species. The Kalenti were amphibious beings, soft-skinned and large-eyed, built for the cold and the dark of deep-water worlds. They did not need sleep the way warm-blooded species did. But even for a Kalenti, 4 days of non-stop work left its marks. Her skin had gone pale at the edges. Her fingers trembled slightly when she reached for her data tablet. Her eyes, which were normally sharp and still, kept drifting to the corner of the screen where the numbers refused to make sense. She was the best intelligence analyst the Galactic Council had ever trained. She had cracked pirate codes, predicted fleet movements, mapped smuggling routes through dead star systems. Not once in 30 years of service. But this was different. She sat alone in her assigned analysis room deep inside Conclave Prime's intelligence division, surrounded by screens full of data from the 14th Patrol Fleet's final recorded moments. She had gone through every piece of it dozens of times. Sensor logs, communication records, navigation data, the faint ghost readings from the 2 Borvac scouts. She had run models. She had built simulations. She had called in 3 separate specialist teams and listened to all of their theories. None of it held together. Because the data was not showing her a battle. It was not showing her an ambush, or a weapon discharge, or a gravitational anomaly. It was showing her something she had no proper word for. The patrol fleet had not been destroyed. It had not fled. According to everything the sensors could measure, the 40 ships had simply stopped being where they were. No energy spike before the disappearance. No radiation bloom. No shockwave. No debris. Nothing that any known weapon or natural force produced. Sarah Voss pulled up the raw data one more time and stared at it. And then, because she was very good at her job and very tired, she stopped looking at what was there and started looking at what was not there. What was not there was the problem. Every ship and every single vessel that had ever moved through space left traces. Heat from its engines, a faint gravitational ripple from its mass, radiation bleed from its power core. Even a drifting, dead, powerless ship left a signature. The universe did not allow things to simply exist without touching the space around them. But the readings from the moment the fleet vanished showed a complete and total absence of all of that. Not a reduction, not a fading. An absence, as though something had reached into that region of space and carefully removed every physical trace of 40 ships at the same exact moment. That was not a weapon. That was not a natural event. That was engineering. She filed her preliminary report with the Council's High Intelligence Office within the hour. The response came back fast, faster than usual, which told her the people at the top were frightened. They gave her full access to the deep archives. Every piece of recorded data about humanity that the Council had collected since first contact, 300 years ago. All of it, unrestricted. She started reading. Most of it was old. Early contact records, behavioral assessments, the political arguments that had eventually led to the Veil embargo 200 years ago. The Council had been afraid of humanity for a long time. That much was clear in every document. Humans were unpredictable, the old report said, emotional, prone to conflict. Their history was full of wars fought over small pieces of land, over ideas, over things that other species found completely irrational. The Council had looked at humanity's past and decided that the safest thing to do was to keep them locked away behind a boundary and wait for them to either grow up or burn out. What the Council had not considered, what no one had seriously considered, was what humanity would do with 200 years of isolation, and a very good reason to be angry. Sarah Voss found the first clue in a trade record from 170 years ago. A human science vessel had been caught trying to move unusual equipment through a neutral trade post, equipment designed for particle isolation at subatomic levels. The ship had been turned away. The equipment had been confiscated. The humans had protested and then gone quiet. She found the second clue in a Border Patrol report from 140 years ago. A Council sensor station near the edge of the Sol zone had picked up an energy reading that the stationed crew had marked as equipment malfunction. The reading lasted 3 seconds and then vanished. The crew had filed it and forgotten about it. Sarah Voss did not forget about it. She ran the reading through every analysis tool she had. It took 6 hours. When the result came back, she sat very still for a long time. The energy signature was consistent with dark matter interaction. Not dark matter observation, not the passive detection that Council science had been working on for centuries. Interaction. Something had reached out and touched dark matter the way a hand touches water. 140 years ago. The clues were everywhere once she knew what to look for. Scattered through decades of reports that had been filed by border crews who didn't know what they were seeing. Dismissed by analysts who hadn't been looking for the right thing. Humans had been working on something enormous, something quiet, something they had kept hidden so carefully that the Council's entire intelligence apparatus had walked right past it for over a century. The project had a name. She found it in a fragment of an intercepted human communication from 80 years ago, a single line that had been flagged as low priority because no one understood the reference. The line read, "Erebus testing complete. Phase 4 authorized." Seravos looked up Erebus in the old human language database. It was a word from one of humanity's ancient mythologies. It meant the deep darkness, the place beyond the edge of the world where light did not reach. She felt something cold move through her. She pulled every thread she could find on Erebus. Most of it was gaps. The humans had been meticulous about keeping their secrets. But enough fragments existed to build a shape. And the shape was terrifying. Erebus was not a weapon in the traditional sense. It was a propulsion and displacement system built around dark matter manipulation. Ships equipped with Erebus did not travel through space the way normal ships did. They folded it. They moved through the dark matter that threaded all of known space, the invisible web that connected every star and every void, and they used it the way a fish uses water. Effortlessly, invisibly. A ship running Erebus was undetectable by any sensor the Council possessed. It produced no heat, no radiation, no gravitational signature. It existed in normal space and outside of it at the same time, ghosting through reality like a thought, present but untouchable. And the patrol fleet had not been destroyed. Her models confirmed it now. The ships had been displaced, physically moved through the dark matter web and dropped somewhere far away. Unharmed, untouched, just relocated, the way someone might pick up a piece from a game board and set it down somewhere less inconvenient. Seravos stared at her final report for a long time before she sent it. The Council had voted to absorb humanity because they believed humans had gone quiet and weak. The truth was something else entirely. While the galaxy had been talking about them, watching them, pitying them, and eventually dismissing them, humanity had spent 200 years in the dark, building something no one else had ever imagined. And whatever they had built, it worked. Then, she sat back in her chair, looked up at the ceiling of her small cold room, and thought about the Luminary Elder's words from the Council session. That is not silence. That is preparation. She had been right. She had been completely, terrifyingly right. Humanity's dark matter warships, Shockwaves,